Hello, my name is Joshua Mugabi. I welcome you to Biology Remedial Lessons. Today we are on Remedial Lesson 10, where we are going to discuss about nutrition. You are welcome. Define nutrition. Define nutrition. The process by which living organisms obtain and assimilate nutrients. Nutrition is the process by which living organisms obtain and assimilate nutrients. When we say obtain, it is to get, and assimilate, it is to use. So it is the process by which living organisms get and use nutrients. We have the autotrophs. Autotrophs, we have examples, the green plants. These ones make their food by the process of photosynthesis. They manufacture their food from simple inorganic molecules of carbon dioxide and water in the presence of sunlight energy, and they make chemical potential energy of carbohydrates and other organic molecules. These carbohydrate and other organic molecules are the ones that are used by the heterotrophs. Heterotrophs are organisms that do not manufacture their own food, but they depend on already made food. And this includes the animals, fungi, and most of the bacteria. They use this chemical potential energy of carbohydrates and other organic molecules for respiration. And during respiration, they produce byproducts like carbon dioxide and water, and then also produce the chemical potential energy of ATP, which they use for thermal energy, heating up the body and warming up the body, and then also to do work. So all that process whereby living organisms are obtaining and using or assimilating nutrients is what we term as nutrition. State the importance of nutrition. State the importance of nutrition. Nutrition is important for respiration to get energy. Nutrition is important for respiration to get energy. We know that during nutrition, we are provided with food, and that is glucose, which is oxidized in the presence of enzymes to give us carbon dioxide, water, and energy. And the energy is the one that we use. So this process of respiration requires provision of food nutrients. Therefore, nutrition is important in respiration so that we can get energy that we use. Still, nutrition is important that it is used for growth. We start as single cells, and those cells undergo division. When they undergo division, the nucleus divides first, and then the daughter nuclei separate, and the cytoplasm pinches off between the nuclei, and we end up getting two cells, one which can keep on dividing and the other may become specialized. But all that is what we refer to as growth. And this growth requires nutrients because we are making new organelles in the cell. We are carrying out different processes in the cell, and all those require energy, and that energy comes from nutrition. So nutrition is important in the process of growth. Still, nutrition is important in development. The embryo at 2 weeks, there is nothing much that can be seen apart from the tail and the structure up, which is like a folded fist. But after the 5th week, we can now see that the embryo is developing ears, it is developing eyes, the heart is developed, and other parts like the spinal cord are developing. And when it comes to the 8th week, we can see that a baby is fully developed. We can see the ears, the head is distinct, the eyes, eyelashes, arms, limbs, and so on. All these stages which the embryo is undergoing is what we are referring to as development. And this development requires energy, and this energy is provided by nutrition. Therefore, nutrition is important in the development of organisms. Still, nutrition is very important in the repair and replacing of worn out and damaged parts and tissue. When the body parts are worn out, they are replaced, and those ones that are damaged, they are repaired. But this one is through the mitotic division of the cells. So there is repairing required for damaged tissues and replacement of the worn out parts and tissues of the organism. Now, every day our skin gets damaged. All the cells get worn out. And for those ones to be replaced, we use the existing cells. Those existing cells will undergo mitotic division from one cell to 2 more cells. And those ones are the ones now that are going to replace the worn out parts and tissues, and also to repair the damaged parts and tissue. But of course, the cells to undergo cell division, there is need of energy, and that energy is provided by nutrition. Therefore, nutrition is important because it is used in the repair and replacement of worn out and damaged parts and tissues. Explain autotrophic mode of feeding. Explain autotrophic mode of feeding. Now, autotrophic mode of feeding, this is the manufacturing of food from simple inorganic substances. Here we are manufacturing food from simple inorganic substances. That is what we call autotrophic mode of feeding. The organism uses simple inorganic substances like carbon dioxide with water in the presence of sunlight energy, which is trapped by chlorophyll, and it produces sugars or starch and also releases oxygen as byproducts. This process is what we refer to as photosynthesis, and it occurs in organisms that carry out autotrophic mode of feeding. Now let us look at the different types of autotrophic modes of feeding. We have photosynthesis and chemosynthesis. Of course, we know photosynthesis is the making of food materials from carbon dioxide, water using sunlight energy. And chemosynthesis is making of food materials using chemical energy instead of sunlight energy. So in photosynthesis, the energy is coming from the light, whereas in chemosynthesis, the energy that we use comes from chemicals. In photosynthesis, this light energy is provided by the sun, and therefore the organisms that carry out photosynthesis, they use sunlight energy. Therefore, we refer to them as photoautotrophs. They are photoautotrophs. They make their own food, and their energy is derived from the sun, which is light energy. Then in the chemosynthesis, they use chemical energy, where they oxidize ammonia to nitrates and nitrates to nitrates. And therefore, these organisms that use chemical energy to manufacture their own food, we can refer to them as chemoautotrophs. Chemoautotrophs. They make their own food, but the source of their energy is from chemicals, or oxidizing ammonia to nitrates and oxidizing nitrites to nitrates. Now, the types of photosynthetic or photoautotrophs, we have the green plants, and we have some of the prokaryotes. Those prokaryotes are the ones that are photosynthetic prokaryotes. Then we also have some of the protoctists. Protoctists, we have examples, the green, red, and brown algae. Those are some of the organisms that carry out autotrophic mode of feeding, which is photosynthesis, or what we call the photoautotrophs. Then the chemoautotrophs, we have the nitrifying bacteria. These ones, they use chemical energy, which is derived from oxidation of ammonia to nitrates, and also the oxidation of nitrites to nitrates. They obtain their energy, which they use to manufacture their foods, and therefore we refer to them as chemoautotrophs. Explain heterotrophic mode of feeding. Explain heterotrophic mode of feeding. Heterotrophic mode of feeding is obtaining food from autotrophs and other organic substances. It's the type of feeding where we obtain food from autotrophs and other organic substances, meaning the organisms are getting already manufactured food from the autotrophs and other organic substances. That type of feeding is what we call heterotrophic mode of feeding. And the types are Holozoic, we have saprophytic, and parasitic. These are the types or the heterotrophic mode of feeding types: Holozoic, saprophytic, and parasitic. Explain the various types of heterotrophic nutrition. Explain the various types of heterotrophic nutrition. We have Holozoic. Holozoic is one of the types of heterotrophic nutrition, and this is the mode of feeding by animals where solid complex food substances are ingested, digested, and egested. So Holozoic is a mode of feeding by animals whereby solid complex food substances are ingested. Ingesting means taking in, they are eaten, that is ingestion. And then digested. Digested means that the complex food substances are broken down into the simpler food substances. And then egested. Egested means that the undigested materials are removed from the body. So that is Holozoic type of heterotrophic nutrition. Mode of feeding by animals whereby solid complex food materials are ingested, digested, and egested. Under solid complex food materials, we have the carbohydrates, we have the vitamins, we have the lipids, and then we have the proteins. Those are our solid complex food substances, which are taken in by Holozoic type of heterotrophic nutrition. Another one is Prophetism. Prophetism. This is the type of feeding whereby organisms feed on dead organic matter. They feed on dead organic matter. For example, here we have the molds which are growing on the oranges. These molds are growing on the oranges, and that type of feeding is Prophetism. They feed on dead organic matter. Then we have the fungus growing on the back of a tree. The fungus is growing on the back of the tree. That one is also a type which we call Prophetism. It is a type of heterotrophic nutrition where organisms feed on dead organic matter. Then another type of heterotrophic nutrition is parasitism. 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 Here we are looking at parasitism. We have the feeding from another organism but not killing it. It is the type of feeding where one organism feeds from another organism, but it does not kill that organism, though it may cause some damage. That type of feeding is called parasitism. Of course, the host is harmed and the parasite benefit by draining nutrients from the host. Now we have here a type of parasitism where we have the ectoparasite, the mosquitoes. Now we shall start with this type of mosquito here down. The mosquito takes in infected blood meal, and after 24 hours, the male and female gametes of the parasite fuse in the mosquito's stomach. Then after 6 to 12 days, cell division produces thousands of immature malarial parasite that is in the stomach of the mosquito. Then the infective stage of the parasite invades now the mosquito's salivary glands. Now we have our parasites, which is the Plasmodium, now invading the mosquito's salivary gland. Now, this mosquito again, now it is coming back to feed, or it goes to another person to feed. Now remember, it has got now already the infective stage of parasite in its salivary gland. Now, when it comes to feed again, the infected mosquito now takes in the blood meal. It takes in the blood meal. But what is happening is that now we have the endoparasite. Endoparasite has been now introduced into the body. Now what is going to happen is that now the infective stage, which is the Plasmodium of the parasite, has entered into the bloodstream, and now it will move to the liver. Now when it goes to the liver, in the liver, the parasite will stay in the liver and multiply. Then later on, it will leave the liver and then it goes into the red blood cells. Now, this is our red blood cell. In the red blood cell, the Plasmodium will enter into the red blood cells and they will multiply in there. As they multiply and increase in number, they are going to cause the red blood cell to burst. And then this Plasmodium will attack other red blood cells. That is now when a person feels the chilling and the fever and the shivering. At that stage, the Plasmodium are attacking the different types of cells. Then the maturation and production of parasites, male and female sex cells, the gametes are made. Now, after 48 to 78 hours, when a mosquito comes and bites that individual, then it is going to carry those Plasmodium and then the cycle is going to repeat. Now, that type of feeding is what we call parasitism. The organism is feeding on another organism, but not killing it, but causing damage to it. Another one is symbiosis. In symbiosis is an association in which organisms of different species derive mutual benefit from one another. Symbiosis is an association in which organisms of different species they derive mutual benefits from one another. So it is a type of association where we have organisms which are not related but from different species but deriving mutual benefits from this type of association between each other. The common type of symbiosis that we always talk about are the bacteria found in the digestive system of a cow or a sheep or ruminants. These bacteria, they produce an enzyme cellulase, and cellulase enzyme digests cellulose to glucose. So the cow now is going to benefit by getting glucose, which has been an end product of digestion of cellulose by cellulase, which was produced by the bacteria. So the bacteria is assisting the cow to get glucose from cellulose. But the bacteria is also benefiting from the cow in that it obtains shelter and protection and food. So the bacteria is benefiting and the cow is benefiting. That type of association is what we are calling symbiosis. Another one, they are the bacteria in the root nodules. These are bacteria that we find in the leguminous plants, the root nodules of the leguminous plant. These bacteria, they fix nitrogen into the soil, or they fix nitrogen which cannot be utilized by the plant and convert it into nitrates which can be used by the plants. So the plant is benefiting by having nitrogen converted to nitrates which it can use directly. But also the bacteria benefits in that it gets sugars which have been digested by the plant, and it also gets protection, and it also gets shelter. So both of them are benefiting. The bacteria is benefiting and the leguminous plants are also benefiting. That type of association is what we call symbiosis. Then there is another association between the fungus and the algae. These two, when they come together, they form what we call the lichen. The fungus is able to obtain water and mineral salts. So it provides the algae with water and mineral salts. Whereas the algae is going to make food. It will provide the fungus with the sugars. So both of them are benefiting in this type of relationship where the fungus is providing water and mineral salts, and then the algae is providing sugars. So that type of association is referred to as symbiosis. So those are the common type of symbiosis association that we know. But there is also the recent one, the new one which has been proposed. They are organisms that we find in the cell like the chloroplast and the mitochondria. It is believed that these were sometime back, long time ago, they were prokaryotic bacteria that were living independently. But they invented the ancient modern eukaryotic cells. They invaded them and then they became part of the cell. So after being taken in by the cell, they now started doing different activities whereby they were benefiting from the cell and the cell was also benefiting from them. Now, when you look at the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. It is the one that provides or produces energy. So it provides energy which is going to be used by the cell, and the cell is providing shelter. So which means that both of the organisms are benefiting from each other, and that type of association is said to be endosymbiosis. Then when you look at the chloroplasts are trapping sunlight energy using the chlorophyll in them, and then they manufacture food by the process of photosynthesis. Now this food or starch or sucrose is going to be used by the cell. So the cell is benefiting, and then also the chloroplast is benefiting in that it is getting shelter and it is also getting protection from the cell. So that type of association is referred to as endosymbiosis, and it is also a type of heterotrophic nutrition. Define omnivorous, carnivorous, herbivorous mode of nutrition. Define omnivorous, carnivorous, and herbivorous mode of nutrition. We shall start with the omnivorous. Omnivores are animals which feed partially on plant materials and partially on fresh. And the example we have is human. The omnivores are animals which feed partially. Partially means part of their diet is including plant material. And then also another part includes the fresh. Those are the ones that we refer to as the omnivores. Their diet include partly plant materials and another one includes the fresh materials. And some of the materials that we have the plant materials or vegetables and roughages. And then we also have the other side of the fresh materials where we are having the proteins and so on. So those are the omnivores which feed partially on plant material and partially on fresh. Then we have the herbivores. Herbivores, these are organisms that feed directly on plants. And the examples we have the rabbits, rats, and beetles. These ones, they feed directly on plants. Organisms that feed directly on plants, we refer to them as herbivores. Examples here we have the rabbits, we have the rats, and then we have the beetles. Those are herbivores because they feed directly on the grass or the vegetation. So we refer to them as herbivores. And they can be referred to, or we can call them as primary consumers, or sometimes we can refer to them as first order consumers. Those are the herbivores. Then we have another group, the carnivores. Carnivores feed on fresh alone. The carnivores, they feed on fresh alone. And examples of carnivores, we have the fox, we have the owls, and we have the stoat. Those are the animals that feed on fresh alone. For them, they just feed on fresh alone. That one, now we can refer to them as secondary consumers, or we can refer to them as second order consumers. Those are the carnivores. Hello, my friends. Thank you very much for participating in Biology Remedial Lesson 10, where we have discussed about nutrition. Let's meet again in Remedial Lesson 11, where we shall discuss about photosynthesis. Thank you very much. Please do not forget to press that subscription button.